Why do you keep thinking about them? Even after months, even after years? Why does their name still echo inside your head when you least expect it? Why does a single word, a random place, a forgotten song on the radio, bring it all rushing back like a wave you thought you had escaped? You could be walking, working, healing, smiling, and suddenly boom, a memory, a flash, a feeling, and you're right back where it all began. No, you're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not broken, you're human. And that ache you feel, that emptiness you can't name, that is something far deeper than simply missing someone. It's not about wanting them back. It's not about obsessing, it's not about drama, it's about you. Because as Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You see, this isn't just about a person. This is about what they represented, a feeling, a version of you that existed when they were around, a need that went unfulfilled, a story that ended too soon. You're not just remembering them, you're remembering who you were with them. You're chasing a part of yourself you haven't healed yet, and that's where it begins. Not in forgetting them, but in finally understanding yourself. Let me show you how. Chapter 1. It's not them, it's what they represented. Have you ever asked yourself why someone you barely talk to anymore still lives rent-free in your mind? Why their name still hits differently? Why their memory feels less like nostalgia and more like an unfinished sentence? Let me tell you something powerful. It's not them you're missing. It's what they represented. They weren't just a person. They were a symbol of something your soul was starving for. They represented acceptance, love, attention, or maybe even pain that felt familiar. Sometimes it's not about the person at all. It's about the way they reflected something deep inside you. They were a mirror to your childhood wounds, to the moments where you felt invisible, to the nights you cried yourself to sleep, wondering why you weren't enough. Maybe they were the first person who looked you in the eyes and made you feel like you mattered, like you were seen. Or maybe they triggered something darker, a void you never knew existed until they touched it. A kind of emotional earthquake that shook open a door to your forgotten self. They didn't just enter your life, they unlocked it. That's why they still linger. Not in your bed, but in your being. Not in your phone, but in your frequency. Carl Jung said it best. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that's exactly what's happening here. You're not obsessed with them. You're obsessed with who you were around them. The feelings they stirred, the self-worth they temporarily gave you, the hope they awakened, the version of you that felt more alive and more enough when they were close. But this isn't a love story. This is a wake-up call. This is your inner child crying out, don't chase them. Understand what they showed you. The truth? You're not stuck on them. You're stuck on the version of you that existed when they were around. And until you face that, the cycle will continue. Different names, different smiles, same emptiness, same pattern. So stop asking, why did they leave? And start asking, what wound did they expose in me that I haven't healed? Because healing doesn't come from blocking someone. It comes from unlocking yourself. Healing doesn't come from forgetting them. It comes from forgiving yourself for needing what they gave you and learning how to give it to yourself now. This is your turning point. Not to move on, but to move inward. And once you do that, you don't just break the loop. You rewrite the story. Chapter 2. The mind repeats what the soul hasn't healed. Let me ask you something deep. Have you ever tried to move on so hard that it felt like a second job? You deleted the photos, blocked them on every platform. You buried yourself in work, started new habits, posted stories with your brightest smile, told your friends, I'm done, I'm over it. You even convinced yourself that dating someone new would help silence the voice in your head that still whispered their name. And for a while it worked. Until one random evening you're walking home and a song plays, and suddenly you're 10 steps deep into a memory you thought was long gone. Or you catch the smell of a familiar cologne. Or someone says a phrase they used to say, and boom, you're back. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, energetically. It's like your heart has muscle memory. And no matter how much your mind says, I've moved on, Your soul quietly replies, "Not yet." And you ask yourself, why is this happening? Why now? Why again? The answer is brutally honest. Because your soul is not finished. Because your unconscious hasn't healed. And because the loop isn't a punishment, it's a signal. Your mind isn't broken. It's just trying to tell you something. You see, your unconscious mind is like a sacred vault. It stores more than memories. It stores meanings. Meanings that you haven't fully processed. Lessons you skipped in your rush to escape the pain. Every unhealed wound, every ignored truth, every emotion you buried under "I'm fine," it's still there. And the mind will keep replaying that old scene, that old name, that old moment, until you finally get the message. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And most people do exactly that. They numb, they distract, they move on physically but never spiritually. And that's why the ghost keeps returning. Because you can't silence the soul with noise. You can't erase a wound with a new person. You can't outrun the parts of yourself you left behind. Listen carefully. That person showing up in your dreams. That sudden wave of tears when you're alone. It's not about them anymore, it's about you. It's your inner world tapping on your shoulder saying, "Hey, don't forget this. Don't bury this. Heal this." You're not going crazy. You're going deeper. This loop isn't here to break you. It's here to rebuild you. It's sacred pain, the kind that arrives only when your soul is ready to evolve. And that evolution doesn't happen through forgetting. It happens through remembering yourself, the version of you that cried silently, the version of you that gave too much and got too little, the version of you that compromised your worth just to feel loved. You don't need another relationship. You need a reunion with yourself. So stop numbing, stop running, and start asking the real questions. Not, how do I move on? But, what did I leave behind inside me that's still aching? Because healing doesn't begin when they disappear. Healing begins when you finally show up. For yourself. Your future self isn't waiting for someone new to fix you. They're waiting for you, a whole aware, transformed. And until you answer that call, your mind will keep repeating the lesson. Same emotions, different people, same heartbreak, different masks. But here's the good news. The moment you stop avoiding the pain and start integrating it, the loop ends. That's when healing begins. That's when freedom begins. And that's when you begin again. Chapter 3. Not a love problem, a self problem. You keep thinking about them, don't you, late at night, early in the morning, in the middle of random conversations. They flash through your mind like a memory on repeat. And you wonder, am I still in love? Is this a sign? Should I go back? Should I reach out? But let me tell you something that might flip your entire perspective. This isn't a love problem. This is a self problem. Thinking about someone over and over doesn't always mean you still want them. It doesn't mean they're your soulmate. It doesn't mean there's unfinished business with them. What it really means is that there's unfinished business with you. You see, we don't just get attached to people. We get attached to who we were when we were with them. And sometimes a younger, softer, more vulnerable version of you, one that never truly got to speak, still lives in that story. Maybe it was the version of you that finally felt seen, the one that believed, maybe this time love will stay. Maybe it was the you that thought, I don't have to pretend anymore, I can breathe here. Even if that safety was an illusion, even if that love was conditional, even if the relationship was built on borrowed time, that version of you still remembers, still longs, still aches. But here's where it gets deeper. In trying to hold on to them, you lost parts of yourself. You silenced your truth just to keep the peace. You shrunk your dreams to make them more comfortable. You said yes when your soul was screaming no. You abandoned your boundaries just to be accepted. You betrayed your authentic self, all in the name of love. And now the pain you feel, that ache in your chest, that magnetic pull that hits you in quiet moments, that haunting sense that something's missing, it's not about rekindling the relationship. It's about reclaiming the version of you that you left behind. That's what your soul is really asking for. Carl Jung called this sacred process individuation, the act of becoming whole again. It's not about fixing the past. It's not about rewriting the love story. It's about calling your power back. Every part of you that you scattered across someone else's universe, every truth you buried just to be loved, every boundary you erased just to be chosen. It's time to bring it all home. Because the real heartbreak, it wasn't losing them, it was losing you. And healing doesn't mean texting them back, it doesn't mean chasing closure. It doesn't mean waiting for an apology you may never receive. Healing means turning inward. It means meeting yourself, raw, unedited, unfiltered, the version of you that's been waiting beneath all that pain, waiting to be heard. This isn't about love. This is about self-abandonment, and it's time to stop abandoning yourself. Because love that costs you was never love. Validation that required you to shrink was never real. Affection that demanded your silence was never safe. So no, you don't need to go back. You need to go deeper. Not to them, to you. The real you. The whole you. The one who no longer performs, pleads, or proves. This is not the end of a love story. This is the beginning of coming home to yourself. Chapter 4. Stop running, start listening. Let me tell you something no one taught us growing up. You don't heal by forgetting. You don't heal by pretending you're fine. You don't heal by smiling through the pain, blocking their number, or stuffing memories into the basement of your mind hoping they'll disappear. That's not healing. That's hiding. Real healing. It's not about running away from the ache. It's about leaning into it, with courage, with honesty, with presence. Because every time you think of them, every time your chest tightens when you hear their name, every time a random song, a scent, a place hijacks your peace, that isn't a curse. That's not weakness, that's not madness, that's a message. A sacred whisper from your soul saying, look here. This is where your voice was silenced. Look here. This is where you stopped choosing yourself. Look here. This is where something beautiful, your laughter, your light, your power, was buried just to make someone else comfortable. And yet, what do? We shame ourselves. We judge ourselves. We say, I should be over this by now. What's wrong with me? But what if, instead of silencing those thoughts, you started listening to them? What if you stopped running and started asking the right questions? What did they awaken in me that still feels unresolved? What part of myself did I hand over just to be loved? What truth did I swallow just to be accepted? What boundary did I break to feel needed? What did I lose while trying not to lose them? Because here's the truth. Your mind doesn't repeat what you've healed. It only echoes what's unresolved. And those echoes aren't here to torment you, they're here to teach you. They are not chains, they are clues. Clues pointing to the very parts of you that are still waiting to be seen, heard, healed. Every thought, every memory, every wave of emotion is your inner world trying to say, you matter too. Don't abandon yourself again. This isn't about going back to them. This is about going back to you, to the version of you that got left behind, to the soul that dimmed its light just to stay in someone else's shadow, to the heart that was never meant to be silenced. So no, this isn't madness, this isn't obsession. This is a sacred inner alarm, and you finally stopped hitting snooze. This is your soul knocking on the locked door you've been afraid to open. And now you have a choice. You can keep running, from memory to memory, person to person, distraction to distraction. Or you can pause, sit with it, listen, heal. Because the healing you crave, it's not in forgetting them, it's in remembering yourself. Not the edited version, not the people-pleasing version, but the raw, real, radiant version of you who deserves to feel seen by yourself. This is your moment. Stop running, start listening, and finally, come home. Chapter 5. Archetype Soul Contracts. Carl Jung didn't believe we simply fall for people. He believed we fall for symbols, for archetypes. That person you can't forget. It may not have been them as an individual. It may have been what they represented in the depths of your unconscious. Maybe they walked into your life as the savior, the one who seemed to rescue you from your loneliness. Maybe they were the nurturer, the one who gave you the warmth you never received as a child. Or perhaps they were the rebel, awakening the wild, untamed side of you that had been sleeping for too long. The refuge, your safe place in a chaotic world, or even more mysteriously, the shadow, reflecting back the parts of yourself you deny, avoid, or fear. These aren't just roles, they are archetypes, universal symbols buried deep in the collective unconscious of humanity. They shape how we connect, how we crave, how we hurt, and ultimately, how we heal. And sometimes what you're truly attached to is not the person, but the story they awakened inside you. The love wasn't just romantic, unless it was mythical. They were part of a soul contract, not meant to stay forever, but to show you something you wouldn't have seen without them. Maybe they entered your life to remind you of your worth, to awaken your forgotten fire, to shake the dust off your soul, and yes, sometimes, to break your heart just enough for light to get in. They were a chapter, not your whole book. And now that you've read it, don't just close it, understand it. Because the archetype they carried may no longer be needed, but the transformation they triggered, that was the real purpose all along. Chapter 6, From Repetition to Revelation. So many people rush to move on. They delete the number, erase the photos, block them on every app, burn the letters, the gifts, the traces. But in all that effort to erase the past, they forget to understand it. They never pause to ask the most important question: what part of me was trying to survive through this person? Because sometimes love wasn't love. It was survival, a coping mechanism, a lifeboat for the version of you that was drowning in loneliness, abandonment, insecurity. That person may have felt like home, but only because you were homeless inside yourself. And here's the truth most people avoid. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot release what you do not understand. You can block the person, but you can't block the pattern unless you do the inner work. So when those thoughts come again, when the memories loop like a broken record, don't shame yourself. That's not regression. That's not weakness. That's repetition with a purpose. It's your soul whispering to go back, not to stay, but to understand. Because there was a moment, a memory, that changed you. Something you weren't ready to face then, but you're ready now. This is not just about letting go. It's about leveling up. It's about turning pain into power, patterns into wisdom, wounds into awakening. Because repetition is not punishment. It's a doorway to revelation. And your healing begins the moment you stop running and start remembering who you truly are. Chapter 7. Closure isn't about them, it's about you. You keep telling yourself you need answers, one last talk, one final apology, some neat ending to the mess they left behind. But let me tell you something that might just free you. Closure doesn't come from them, it never has, it never will. Because real closure, it doesn't arrive in a text. It doesn't sit across from you at a cafe. It doesn't say, "I'm sorry." It rises within you. It's born in self-awareness, not in someone else's explanation. The real questions are not, why did they leave? Why did they hurt me? Why did it end? The real questions are, why did I cling so hard? Why did their absence feel like I was gasping for air? What part of me believed I had to shrink, beg, or break just to feel loved? Because when you start answering those questions, you stop waiting for them to make it right. You start realizing it's not them you were waiting for all along. It was you. The version of you who stopped choosing yourself. The version of you who thought love had to hurt. The version of you who made someone else your oxygen, forgetting you had lungs of your own. And that's the closure no one can take from you, not even them. Because when you finally understand why you stayed, why you broke, why you gave so much, you don't need their apology anymore. You don't need their approval. You don't even need their presence. You just need to come home to yourself, and that's the most powerful ending of all, because it's not really the end, it's the beginning of you. Chapter 8, Turning Memory into Wisdom. This was never about erasing the past, not about pretending it didn't hurt, not about forcing yourself to just move on. Because the goal was never to forget, it was to transform, to take what happened, the pain, the loss, the heartbreak, and turn it into something powerful. Because inside every scar is a seed, a lesson, a treasure buried in the dirt of your suffering. Carl Jung didn't fear pain. He revered it. He knew pain wasn't the enemy. Denial was, suppression was, avoidance was. Because what you refuse to feel only controls you more. But the moment you sit with your pain as without judgment, the moment you stop labeling yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as becoming, something shifts. You begin to realize that heartbreak cracked you open so more light could get in. That loss stripped away illusions so you could finally see the truth. That loneliness wasn't a curse, it was a return to yourself. This isn't just healing, it's alchemy. You're not here to forget the story, you're here to rewrite its meaning, to turn memory into wisdom, to walk away not bitter, not broken, but brighter, stronger, wiser, whole. Because in the end, you were never destroyed. You were forged. Chapter 9. The final lesson. They came to wake you up. You see, that person didn't enter your life to stay. They weren't your destination. They were the awakening. They came like a storm, beautiful, chaotic, undeniable. But they weren't here to complete you. They were here to mirror you, to show you the parts of yourself you had forgotten, to be the alarm clock your soul had been waiting for. They weren't your forever. They were your reminder. They reminded you of your capacity to feel, to ache, to hope, to love with a depth you didn't know you had. They symbolized a turning point, a sacred interruption in the autopilot of your life, because the journey was never about loving them forever. It was about loving yourself fully, even the messy parts, even the forgotten parts, even the parts you were taught to hide. And now, you've reached the final test, not to let go in anger, not to erase them in resentment, but to remember without pain, to release without bitterness, to love without needing. Because that's what true healing looks like. It's not numbness, it's not detachment, it's peace. That's individuation. That's where your soul becomes whole again, not because someone else put the pieces back, but because you did. And that is the beginning of freedom. Because you don't need them to come back. You don't need the past to make sense. You just need to wake up to who you truly are and who you were always meant to be. So if they still linger in your mind, if their name still echoes in the quiet, don't fight it, face it. Not to bring them back, but to finally bring yourself back. Because your soul isn't longing for another person. It's longing for you, the version of you that was lost in loving them, the version of you that forgot your own worth. Your soul doesn't want them. It wants you, whole, awake, and finally, free. So let this be the moment you stop chasing answers in others and start becoming the closure you've always needed. If this message stirred something inside you, don't let it fade. Share it. Reflect on it. Reclaim your story. Because healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering who you are, and maybe, just maybe, that's who you've been searching for all along.